So there was this girl I was talking to at the time, and I needed to have a talk. Yeah, that one. And we decided that we would go to our local college town statue to do so. Many kids that go to our college went to hang out there, take pictures, climb on the statue, college kid stuff. Basically, this statue was 30 minutes away from the middle of just farmland. The road to get there is a small, one lane each direction road. I don't know the story behind it or anything, but it's a popular, you'd think safe, place. So we decided to head out, and it's probably 1 AM at that point, so you could see the stars and all of that. It was pitch black outside. When we got there, I got a really creepy feeling, but we wanted to take a look at the statue, so we got out of the car anyway and proceeded to walk to the statue. About a 5-minute walk from the gravel parking spot. We take a look and decided to get back in my car because it was dark and cold outside. This is when I decided to keep my engine running and back up into the spot so I could look at the small road to see if anything was happening. About 10 minutes into our conversation, I see a large white SUV, I think it's an Escalade, drive past us. I didn't think anything of it, but it was the only other car we'd seen all night. The car drives maybe a quarter of a mile down the road and suddenly does a 3-point turn. Weird, but it's not a problem. He then comes back towards us and takes a right onto a side road that sat directly in front of us. At this point, I'm like, okay, he missed a turn, no problem. About a quarter mile down the side road, the SUV does another 3-point turn and is now facing my car directly. The SUV is stopped 100 feet or so in front of us, with its headlights blaring down my car, a compact sedan. Now, I was like, okay, this is super weird, I'm gonna get out of here. Suddenly, the car drives straight ahead into our gravel lot and sort of blocks off the only entrance and exit. The SUV then sits here again, and we're directly facing each other. At this point, all of my spidey senses are in full gear, and I'm ready to book it. The girl with me is like, no, we need to finish talking, he's just being weird. I decide to just start hauling ass, and as soon as I squeeze my car out of the lot onto the road, the SUV is tailing me. So I'm like, okay, this guy obviously wants to do something with us. I told the girl to call the cops, but of course, in the middle of nowhere, there's no service. I start to absolutely push my car, and I'm going 120 plus miles per hour on this small country road surrounded by nothing. And of course, the SUV is right on our tail. The road that we're on is straight of nothingness for 15 miles, and we continue driving. Once we finally reached to a sense of civilization, there was an intersection with other cars. I finally get my sigh of relief and thought this guy would leave us alone, so just to test or trick him, I turn on my left signal and get ready to turn. I turn my wheel enough so that it looks like I was going to turn, and then I put my entire weight on my gas and went straight. He followed me exactly, with the turn signal, turning, accelerating, everything. A couple of miles later, we finally get reception and call the police. As we're on the phone with them, there is a brightly lit gas station, one of those big ones, like Quick Trip or Racetrack, and we turn into that because if this guy's going to kill or kidnap us, he's going to have to do it where other people can see. As soon as I turn into that gas station, he books it and hauls ass wherever the hell he was going. We gave a description of what happened to us to the dispatcher and continued on our conversation. To this day, I don't know what the person wanted or what their objective was, but I'm glad I didn't find out. This story takes place in November 2017. I was 18. I'm a very short girl, 4'10", and I get anxious when someone even looks at me in a way to suggest they might not like me. So needless to say, I am incredibly non-confrontational. My friend and I were out shopping. It was something we'd do maybe every few months just to bond since we didn't have much time to hang due to college. She's just like me, barely scraped 5'1" and very non-confrontational. It's probably why we became friends. On every shopping trip, we'd find ourselves in Ann Summers. We're both overly endowed and struggle to find bras anywhere else. And Ann Summers had some great sales, so we'd grab at the cheap bras while we could. This shopping trip wasn't any different. We browsed shops until we got to Ann Summers, but that's when things took a turn. I had barely stepped foot into the shop when a woman with sort of a Slavic accent stopped me. Her finger jammed into my chest. "Spit the gum out," she demanded. Assuming she was an employee, I gave a very sheepish, "I'm really sorry," and ran out of the shop and spat my gum out and threw it away. When I went back in, I realised that this woman was not an employee. She was a customer who was browsing and happened to be near the door when my friend and I entered the shop. It should have been obvious to me at the time. No salesperson would ever have been like that. Not one that wanted to keep their job anyway. But I kept my head down, and when I walked past her, holding my breath in hopes that she wouldn't notice me again, she didn't, and I thought I was in the clear. My friend and I browsed the shop, trying to avoid the woman, but the shop wasn't very big, probably only 15 feet by about 18 feet, so eventually I ended up at the sales stand by the door where she had been stood. I tried to keep my distance while browsing. I was looking at the price tags, but realised I didn't know what the discount was, so I leaned over slightly to check the discount sign. It's important to note that this woman had a pushchair, which is a stroller for the Americans. You'd think that maybe she had a child in this pushchair, but no, it was full of plastic carrier bags. I didn't look too much at it, but I could tell that everything in there was double bagged and tied shut. Whatever was in those bags she wanted to protect. This sense of protection became very relevant because when I leaned over to look at the discount sign, I was leaning slightly close to her pushchair. She was about 3 feet away, but apparently it was too close. The woman was on the other side of the chair, but the moment she saw me, she ran around it to where I was stood. She hit me in the face. It was somewhere between a slap and a punch. I couldn't quite tell because I was in shock. All I knew is that it hurt. "Watch the personal space," she hissed in my ear. I apologised to her. This woman just hit me and I apologised to her. I regret it now, but at the time I didn't want to provoke her any further. Not that I knew that I did anything to provoke her in the first place. In shock, I turned around and ran to the back area, grabbing my friend's hand and pulling her with me. The back area was separated by a tiny wall that only stretched halfway across the shop since the adult toys were stored there. I wanted to keep them out of sight from the general public. I stood there, holding my friend's hand and shaking as I whispered, "She just hit me," to my friend. We stood there for a good minute in silence. My friend was positioned in a way that she could see the rest of the store while I hid behind the wall. "She's gone," my friend told me. I let out a breath that I didn't know I was holding. "Can we stay in here a while?" I asked my friend, worried that the woman would be outside waiting for me. The front of the store was open, but she could have easily just have been a couple of feet down the road and out of sight, waiting for me to leave. My friend agreed and we slowly browsed the shop again. About 5 minutes later we got to the counter to check out. The girl working behind the counter looked outside, then looked back at us. That woman had been in here for 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do. She told the two of us. She told me to spit out my gum when we first came in, and then she hit me because I was too close to her, I told her. "She hit you?" The worker was wide-eyed. "If I'd known that, I would have called security. I'm so sorry." I smiled and shrugged. "It's fine." It really wasn't fine, but it wasn't the worker's fault. She didn't look too much older than I did, and I wouldn't have known what to do in her situation either. Still shaken up, my friend and I made our way out the store. I looked around, but I didn't see the woman. "Can we go home now?" I asked my friend. We hadn't finished browsing all the shops, but I was just so paranoid we'd bump into the woman again. She agreed, and we got the bus home. When I got home, my parents encouraged me to report the incident to the police. I called an emergency line, and their answer was basically, "Well, what do you expect us to do about it?" Unless I went back to the Ann Summers and requested the security footage, which I wasn't even sure if they actually had. They wouldn't do anything. It's been over 3 years now, and I'm sure that the woman was likely to have been homeless and or on drugs. It's the only explanation I can think of the carrier bags and their protectiveness. It was either everything she owned or drugs, or both. So, to the possibly homeless, possibly drugged up woman who hit me, I hope in the current state the world is treating you well, and you're finally getting the personal space you wanted. But let's not meet again. This was several years ago now, when I was in college, and I was headed back to my apartment late one night after being out with friends. As I went to make a left turn into the complex, I checked to see if anyone was behind me, and since no one was in front of me or behind me, I opted not to worry about using a turn signal. I parked outside my building, and as I was crossing the street to get to my apartment, a car was driving towards me. I wondered where it had come from, since I was sure no one was near me when I turned in, but I was only 18, very short and naive, and instead of being cautious or fearful, I instead wanted to be helpful. The car stopped approximately 16 feet or so away from me as I was right in the middle of the street, and a man got out and asked, "Do you live here?" I thought maybe he needed directions, and I told him that I did live there. As he asked this, he's walking towards me, and as soon as I answered, he lunged at me, grabbed a handful of my hair with his right hand, and grabbed my throat with his left, and started dragging me to his car as he growled that he ought to cut my effing neck. To say that I was in shock was an understatement. His car was running with the door open, and it wasn't until I saw his car door before my brain literally used my name and said, "Caitlin, scream!" Once I finally started screaming, he pushed me away while he jumped in his car and took off, and I ran to the apartment. I was shaking so badly I could barely get my key in the lock, and once inside, I realised my boyfriend was there because he'd usually come by earlier in the night to surprise me, but since I wasn't home, he'd gone off to bed. Of course I was still freaking out, but instead of him being concerned, he acted like an arse because he was upset that I was coming in so late and I didn't even call the police. Once I told my mum the next day, she insisted that I call them, but nothing ever came of it. I often wondered what the guy thought I did to deserve to have my effing neck cut. I'm sure it wasn't because I didn't use a turn signal, so I even wonder where he came from. I never wanted to meet him again, else ever did. Back in July 2018, me and my 3 best friends decided to go on a vacation to Barcelona. The 4 of us, all females, were 18 at the time and just finished our freshman year of college. For context, we had planned this trip for several months, but the lazy asses we are took our time before booking our flights in Airbnb. We eventually started our search in May, and if you have ever been to Barcelona, you might know that it's already pretty late if you want to find an affordable and well located summer accommodation. We ended up scrolling on several websites for days as everything was way out of our budget. One of my friends finally found this very decent studio located on the Ramblas, a very touristy neighbourhood. The condo was actually located on a narrow street that was perpendicular to the main Rambla. You had to walk about 500 metres, about 0.3 miles, until you arrived at a sketchier end of the street, where the flat was. It didn't really bother us, as the building was pretty secure. You had to open the first front door that led to the streets, and then you had to take the stairs to the second floor, where you had a second door which required another key. This second door led to 3 condos, so we had a third and final key to our personal flat. This final door didn't have any outdoor handle, which meant that if we were to leave without our keys, we would end up locked out. There was finally no outside handle on the balcony door either. You could only open the door from the inside. It might seem like a lot of details, but it's important for what comes next. The day we checked in, we're pretty excited despite our terrible exhaustion. We'd been travelling for 15 hours at that point, so we decided to go smoke a cigarette on the balcony. The balcony next to ours belonged to the next door neighbours, who were a bunch of Italian boys who we only met on that very moment. They'd been pretty loud throughout our stay, but we never thought too much of it. As last elements of context, our condo was disposed as follows. The front door led to the main room, which there was 2 of my friends were sleeping. There was a bed on the left, and at the end of the room was the living room, which also worked as a kitchen and bedroom. The sofa was foldable, where my 3rd friend and I were sleeping. We were there for 5 nights. As the young women that we were, our daily routine was pretty consistent. We'd go clubbing every night, go home around 4 AM, pass out in our beds and wake up at 11. We'd then visit the city until about 7 PM and get ready to repeat. Our first 3 nights were awesome. We had made some male friends who were staying in Barcelona too, so we'd meet up with them and it was fun. Yet the 4th night was rather creepy. We'd gone home at 4 AM, screwed around with my friends for an hour until we fell asleep at about 5. Around 7:30, my friend who was sleeping with me in the room and suffers from sleep paralysis wakes up as she feels something is tickling her ankle. She opens her eyes and sees someone crouching at the end of the bed, his hand on her ankle, as if he was looking at something under the bed. At this moment, she's convinced that she's experienced sleep paralysis again, but the fear makes her sit on the bed and shout, "What the F?" which rarely happens with sleep paralysis as your muscles are often numb. The shouting wakes me up, and I see the guy too, at the end of our bed, and still half asleep I whisper, "Edward?" I think I'd been dreaming about a friend of mine and confused this guy with him. The guy gets scared, suddenly gets up and stares at us, and then tiptoes away saying, "Oops, oops, oops." He walks past the bed where my friends are dead asleep and walks out the front door. My friend and I stayed up for a long time talking about what we'd just experienced, and then we woke the other girls up and told them the story. We never knew how this guy broke into a flat, and he didn't steal anything, even though we had ostentatiously left our credit cards, IDs, phones, and cash on the table. The only thing is, that night, we didn't lock the front door, but it was closed, so normally no one could open it as there was no handle, unless someone had a key. We chose not to talk to the police about it because of this, as it could have told us that we were responsible for not locking the door properly. We also chose not to tell the landlord for the same reason, but also because we didn't want it to ruin our last day there. We tried contacting the neighbours, the Italian guys, and went to their flat and knocked, but they never opened the door. Looking back at it, we should have definitely done something about it, as we shouldn't have stayed there for another minute, but we were too young, I guess. We never figured out what the guy wanted, nor what he was looking for under the bed. None of this makes sense, to be fair. Why would someone come to someone's place, uninvited, to look for something at 7:30 while the occupants are asleep? I guess we'll never know. This happened to me when I was 21, after an OD suicide attempt. I woke up in the hospital in the middle of the night to a nurse saying he needed to replace my IV. He jabs me 2 or 3 times but doesn't hit a vein, so I ask if I could get someone else to try. He says no and keeps going. As he's doing this, he's pushing and wiggling the needles around under my skin, saying he's trying to forget the vein. By the 7th or 8th needle, it registers that he's intentionally trying to hurt me. I ask him, "Why are you doing this?" He just says, "It's your own fault you're here." I was too weak to fight back, and it was the middle of the night. There was no one else around I could call out to. I have no idea how many times he ended up puncturing me in the end. The next day, a different nurse was talking about my IV. She was horrified because she said it was the biggest needle she'd ever seen used on a living patient. Not sure why you'd need to use needles on a dead patient, but that's what she said anyway. A lot of people shrug this off when I tell them about it, but it was so terrifying being alone, helpless, and knowing that the person who was supposed to care for you hated you and wanted to cause you pain. So yeah, a nurse who loves huge needles and hates mentally ill girls, let's never meet again. Edit. Thanks for everyone for your kind words of support. You don't even know what it means to me. For those wondering, I'm doing much better now. This happened 7 years ago, and I didn't report it. Very small town. I was scared that people I work with would find out about my suicide attempt if I pursued it. Plus, I was just focused on survival. You've all encouraged me though, and I'm doing my best to track this guy down and report it to someone. Sending my love to all of those who shared their own medical stories of abuse and trauma in the comments. This past September, I had taken a road trip down to Myrtle Beach with my family. It was myself, my mother, my sister, her husband and their 2 kids. We had used my car and both my sister and my husband's car to transport everything and all of us. We had rented a beach house for a little over a week and had a pretty great time. I was in the middle of a difficult point in my life and struggling with employment and being in between jobs and having just started 2 new jobs fresh. I was a little low on funds and worried about making my car payments and the like, so I opted to head home 2 days early with my car so I could try and get more hours at work. My family expressed being nervous as I planned to leave after dinner and drive through the night to get home. I consoled them that I'd be okay to be up all night and I'd just head straight home and only stop for gas and food as needed. I'm an excellent driver, a tad impatient, so I tend to go until I absolutely had to stop and take a break. However, this would be a 12-hour trip and I knew I needed breaks. So I made a point to stop at every rest stop and at least get out and stretch, so I stayed awake and didn't get too sore. Going through West Virginia, I'm sure you guys know how secluded their rest stops and visitor centres and the likes are, especially when you're heading north from the south, going through the mountains. I stopped at a visitor centre because they had advertising that they had fast food joints, and I had to piss like a racehorse. This was sometime very late at night, maybe 1am to 3am sometime. Side note that sent shivers down my spine after what happened. I like to drive barefoot, so I pulled in, noticed the buildings with fast food were closed, so I drove around the parking lot under street light in front of the visitor centre so I could use the restroom. Laying out my door, I took my time putting my shoes on to walk inside, having looked around and not seeing anything out of the ordinary. I checked my phone and grabbed my wallet before standing up to walk in, making sure my car horn had beeped to signal the doors were locked. Walking towards the centre, I saw a man in a white hoodie standing at the edge of the sidewalk leaning into the centre. I didn't think much of it until I passed him and got an off vibe. I glanced over my shoulder and he was watching me walk in. For some reason, I glanced to my left as I turned back to face forward and noticed another man sitting on the benches that were on the other side of the tall thin bushes. Instantly I thought, nope. I went in and peed, and before I walked out of the bathroom, I called my roommate. As dumb as it was, because he was a good 4 to 6 hours away, I just felt safer. I gave him a rundown of my situation and made him stay on the phone with me. I started to walk out, and I couldn't see the man at the front of the sidewalk anymore. I glanced to my now right and saw both men standing next to a bench. Facing forward, I saw a couple walking in to presumably use the restroom as well. I had an impulse to ask them to walk with me, but my paranoia kicked in because I knew something was wrong somewhere in my situation and I didn't ask, thinking they might know the men. Walking briskly to my car, I explained to my roommate that the men were by the benches. Daring the smallest of the peaks over my shoulder again, I saw the man in the white hoodie walking towards me and told my roommate. Walking a few more paces, I looked back again and saw his pace had quickened. At this point, I told my roommate that he's following me to my car and I booked it. I thankfully had a fob key. I got my key out and ready, and I locked my car and practically threw myself in, not daring a glance back. I threw my car in reverse and gunned it backwards before going back into drive and sped off and didn't even stop to put my seatbelt on until I was at the exit to leave the parking lot. I didn't look back once. Stopped at the next toll road and filed a report, and the workers called for state troopers to head over to check things out. I didn't stop shaking for hours, and I refused to get out of my car until I was home. I horrified myself at the thought of, if those guys had paid attention and made their move more quickly, they could have incapacitated me at my car while I was facing the ground and putting my shoes on, and I could have had absolutely no defence.
The year was 1980. My wife and I lived in the suburbs of San Diego, Normal Heights to be exact. We lived in a small house we rented after moving from Imperial Beach about 10 miles to the south. I worked as a quality assurance manager at a small machine shop nearby. It was a small, quiet neighborhood. This was after the war in Vietnam had ended and a lot of the Vietnamese refugees had come to America, a lot of whom had moved into our area. They were friendly enough. However, we were not very sociable people and mostly kept to ourselves. It was me, my wife, and our 2 dogs, Jeep and Buck. Jeep was wicked smart. At times, it was almost like interacting with another human being. Buck was more of a doofus, but a master escape artist. I couldn't count how many times I'd gone to look for him when he'd find his way out of the yard or run amok through the neighborhood. Nothing unusual or strange happened at that house, nor was I ever worried about my family's safety. Most people knew I was not the one to mess with. After all, I had a rather brutal upbringing. My father hung around with bikers and mafia types. Well, I was practically raised by 1%ers. In fact, not long before that, the police had broken into my house, guns drawn, ordering me on the ground and asserting that they would blow my head off. I'll, let you use your imagination to guess why. So, as you can imagine, I'm not easily frightened. That is, until that one night. A night I don't think I'll ever forget. My wife and I were dead asleep that night. I'd gotten off of work late and I was exhausted. When I suddenly awoke to a sound I can only describe as a car smashing into a brick building at full speed. That sent me to vertical in no time flat. My wife and I stared at each other, both of us too shocked to move. After a second or two, I motioned for my wife to stay in bed as I made my way cautiously through the house. It all happened so quick, I couldn't tell where it had come from or what it could possibly have been. I looked out my back door, unable to see anything, as a heavy marine fog had rolled in, leaving me only 10 feet or so of visibility. I quickly grabbed a flashlight from the cabinet by the door and carefully made my way out of the door. The first thing I noticed as I stepped out into my yard was the silence. There were no crickets chirping, no dogs barking, absolute stillness. I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end as I began to become more and more uneasy as I slowly moved through the yard. My yard was small, surrounded by an old 6-foot-tall wooden fence. There was a single low-wattage flashlight above the back porch, which only served to increase the growing feeling of eerie dread that came over me. As I approached the back gate, I stopped dead in my tracks as I shone the flashlight up onto the gate. Or, more accurately, where the gate used to be. I stood there, amazed. It looked as though the gate had been completely ripped off the fence. What could have possibly torn a heavy 6-foot wooden gate straight from the fence? Even the post was torn apart. I shone my flashlight up past the gate, and to my disbelief, I saw my gate across the alley in my neighbor's yard, on the other side of his short chain-link fence, about 25 or 30 feet from where I stood. It was then that I decided whatever had done that was not something I wanted to meet, not with just a flashlight. I turned around and bolted back inside. Needless to say, we didn't get much sleep that night. A few days went by, and all was quiet, as it always had been, until our neighbor, an older, heavier-set lady, showed up at our door. Apparently, she had found Jeep pouring at her door that morning. However, Buck never came home, nor did we ever see him again. That was 20 years ago, and to this day, I don't know what ever happened to old Buck. But what I do know is that shortly after Jeep returned home, my wife and I saw a news story about a group of Vietnamese refugees who had been detained by the local police for hunting neighborhoods for dogs. All of this only after a neighbor had happened upon them cooking the poor creatures a dozen at a time.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all okay. This is the part of the video where there's no more narration, so if you're expecting any narrations then it might be worth checking out a different video, because this is where they end for this one, and I just talk about general things in life and what's been happening, and we just have a lot of discussion, don't we? I think a lot of you know what this bit's about now anyway. Basically, I don't know where to start this. I mentioned before that I've been having trouble with anxiety stuff, and I know you're probably going to be sick to death of me going on about it, because I spoke about it the last couple of times that I've done this, but recently it's been getting a lot worse. Like, it's been really, really bad for me. The last week or so I've just been so crap with anxiety stuff. Like, it's normal anxiety stuff, but it's also like worrying about like irrational things at the moment. It's really annoying. Like, my brain just seems to lead to these weird irrational places where I worry about things that can happen in the future. It's like down the road and round the bend pretty much I'm worrying about, but even though in my head it's irrational, I sort of just can't help it, and it's like my brain just jumps from one thing to the next, and it's so draining. Which is, I don't know if you can tell in my narrations today that I'm a bit lower in. I mean, I don't put much emphasis on much stuff anyway, but a bit lower than normal probably. I don't know. I'm just feeling a bit at the moment, but I'm hoping that soon it's going to be a bit better. I'm speaking to my doctor next week, so I'm hoping that goes well and they can help me. And I'm also starting therapy in like 6 weeks, but it seems like a long time away. Like I said before, it's been something I've always suffered with, but it has been getting so much worse recently, and it's sort of just becoming like something that's just not ruining my life. It's not the way to put it, but it is in a way. Like it's taken a lot away from my life, like this constant anxiety and worry about something that's not happened and probably will never happen. Do you know what I mean? Probably almost impossible things my brain worries about, and it's like, you know, touch wood they don't happen, but it's ridiculous things I'm worrying about. So I really need to get it sorted. But yeah, so that's why my uploads have been a little bit less frequent. But at the same time, I found a charity that I really want to donate to, so I've started donating to them. I put it on my community tab, so I don't know if you guys saw that. It's called Headway, so it's worth checking out if you're into that sort of thing and like helping different organisations. I think they're based in the UK, if any of you guys are from here. And yeah, I made a video actually recently talking about this anxiety thing, but I never published it because I just felt it was a bit embarrassing in the end. Don't know. Do you know, and it's just you listen to something back and you think, oh, don't upload that. So I want to talk about it now. Obviously, now I'm feeling a little bit better within myself today, whereas that wouldn't be worth uploading. I would probably just be embarrassed. But yeah. What else is going on? I've got to go to university tomorrow. I've actually got to go up there for once. I go to one in London, so I don't mind, to be honest. I don't mind going up there. I just hope I haven't got to like do anything that makes my anxiety worse. This is what I mean. I'm always worrying about stuff, but I'm sure it will be fine. I've done it loads of times now. I'm sure it'll be fine. I get to see my friends at least, because we're still in lockdown for another week or two or whatever it is. Yeah, so at least I get to go see my friends for a bit. And yeah, I've got quite a lot going on at the minute. I've got loads of exams coming up and all assignments due and all that sort of stuff, all the boring stuff. So that's sort of what's going on for me at the minute. Things, don't get me wrong, I'm still a happy person. I always have been, I always will be, but it's something that's really just it's like a weight that's constantly there, if you know what I mean. That's the best way for me to describe it. It's like something, like an anxiety in my stomach that doesn't leave. It's always there no matter how happy I feel. And if it is gone, it's gone for a very short period of time until my brain randomly thinks something to worry about, which is so annoying. But yeah, hopefully get it fixed. I downloaded GTA again recently. I've lost it for ages and I've re-downloaded it. I forgot how fun that game was. I really enjoy GTA. I normally just play FIFA. Like, I don't play much Xbox, to be honest. I get bored quite quickly of games, but I do really like GTA and FIFA. I love them. I've kind of gone off like Call of Duty and that like years ago. I used to love Call of Duty 3 and like World at War and Modern Warfare 2, but I've well gone off of it. But I used to be banging it quick scopes, no scopes. Also, I know this is like, I'm about 250 years late to the party here, but I've got it in my hand here. I bought myself a diary, didn't I? So I could like a calendar diary thing, so I can write things in, because I always forget what I've got to do. And it's a very, very good invention, I must say. I know I'm very, very late to the party. These were probably invented like the 1700s or something, but yeah, it's been quite useful. I mean, I'm very impressed with the diary at the moment. What else has been going on? Not much really. I think the clocks go forward on Sunday, don't they? So it'll be a bit brighter outside, which I know a lot of you guys live in America, and I know the south of America is normally quite hot. But you guys don't understand. England is so cold all the time. It's so annoying. Like, it's genuinely, we get about 3 weeks of heat a year. I'm not even joking. Probably about, that's a bit of an exaggeration, about 6 weeks, probably, of actual summer before it sort of goes back into winter again. It's so annoying. Like, you go out, it's either raining, overcast, it's always cold. Like, I just want it to be warm. It was warm today. This is really weird. The sun came out, and that's probably the first time the sun's come out in about, I mean, I haven't seen the sun in about fucking 700 business days, but it came out today and I thought, oh, it's the start of spring. And then it started raining about an hour later and just went all gloomy and dark. And I thought, for fuck's sake. I really like it when it's summery as well, but you just never get it here. That's why it's so nice when, like, you go to, like, another country, like if you go to Spain, which is sort of nearby, but it's like, yeah, it's not that far, is it? It's about 2 hours on a plane, or 2.5 hours. But it's so nice. It's so much different. It's like, literally, it's like a completely different world when you go somewhere like that, because it's constantly art. Or if it's not, even if it's like, when I went to Italy, right, this is a couple of years ago, even if it's raining and, like, whatever, it's still quite warm. Like, and this is what I've heard about the rain in, like, the south of America. It's not South America, well, I suppose it would be as well, but the south of America, like the United States, is that even if it rains, it's like hot rain, like it's warm rain. But when it's here, it's fucking pissing cold, and it makes your hands hurt, and your ears hurt, and your nose hurt. I just want it to be warm, is what I'm trying to say. I'm fed up with the cold at the minute. I'm fed up with it pissing down with rain every day. It's so annoying. But yeah, I can't wait for the clocks to go forward, because it's daylight for a little bit longer. There's nothing worse than when it starts getting dark at about 3:30 in the afternoon. You think, oh, like, it's horrible. Like, even when I started recording the recordings I'm doing for this video, I'm probably about just over halfway through it. I mean, I put them, like, the unedited ones into, like, a file, and it's about 20 minutes at the moment. So edited down, it will probably be like, well, I don't know, 14-15 minutes. So when I add this on, this will probably be like 10 minutes. So I'll probably have to do another 15 minutes of recording, because I like doing like 40-minute like episodes of these scary stories with this like bit at the end as well. So yeah, I don't know what I was talking about. What am I on about? What was I even saying? I can't remember what I was saying, but yeah, I'm gonna try and just continue talking, and maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, I'm about halfway through my recordings at the minute for this video, and oh, that's what I was gonna say. There we go. When I started recording, it was bright outside, or like getting a little. It was like dusk. Yeah, dusk, and then and then right now when I'm recording this, it's pitch black, and that was about an hour ago. The thing is that when I record, I make so many mistakes, so I keep having to stop and delete it and start again, because I don't want to edit ridiculous amounts. But I keep messing up and I get more frustrated, so I've decided to stop for a bit, and I'll probably record the rest Saturday. Today's Thursday, so I'll record the rest Saturday, maybe have this out on Sunday. So if this is out on Sunday, well done to me for sticking to some sort of schedule, but it probably won't be. More than likely it'll be like next week, and I've let myself down a little bit. But yeah, it's just quite difficult, like, to do stuff with all these exams coming up, but you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. It is what it is. What else can I talk to you guys about? What have you guys been up to anyway? That's what I like hearing about, what you guys do. So if you guys are doing anything interesting, please let me know, because my life is so boring right now. It really is so painful. So if you guys are actually doing anything interesting, then please say. I can live vicariously through you all. What else has been going on? I might go for a run after this. I love going for runs. My knee's a little bit sore at the minute though. I had an operation a few years ago. I think it's just scar tissue. Like, I need to stretch and warm up properly, but I normally don't. So when I go out today, I'm gonna stretch. But I go for so much. I jog so much. I'm do this thing. It's called like Conquer Challenges. I think I spoke about it before, maybe. It's like a virtual run that gradually adds up the distances. So stuff, I went for like a 5k run today, then it will put 5k onto like the tally, and then it will just add up every time I do it, and you get like a medal at the end of it. Right now I'm doing the Ring of Kerry, which is one in Ireland, I think. And how many miles have I done? This is probably in the space of a month, or probably about a month, just over a month. Where is it? There we go. I've done. Hurry uploading. What do you guys? Full. What? Why can I not just see how much? There we go. I've done about 50 miles, probably. Roughly about 50 miles of it. So I do go running quite a bit, really. I do like going for it. It makes you feel a lot better, doesn't it? I can't wait until the gyms here reopen. We can just, do you know what I mean? Just start doing normal stuff again. I'm sick to death of it now. I understand why we've got to do it. Like, I've worked in the NHS. I've worked on the wards. I understand. I get it. Like, do you know what I mean? I understand why we've got to do all this isolation stuff. But the other part of me is like, oh, can we just do something? Like, going to Tesco's, which is like Walmart for you Americans, is like the highlight of my day. You don't understand. Going to Tesco's is all that's open. It's the only thing you can do. Or go for a walk. And you can't even go and meet your friends or anything, really, because you can't go outside your county. You can't go outside, like, because we're in a thing called Tier 4, which is the highest tier. So you can't go from Tier 4 to Tier 4, so I'm stuck here, and loads of my friends live in Kent, and I'm in Essex, so it's like, I can't go and meet anyone or do anything, or just can't do anything. It's so annoying. But I suppose it'll get better soon. I have waffled for a very long time now, haven't I? I should probably end this. Alright, thanks a lot for listening to me ramble on, and let me know what you guys have been doing. Alright, love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.